They copied and pasted, some might call it plagiarism, which is something that the Prime Minister has some familiarity with.
Already twisting the knife on Mark Carney. Since forming government, Mark Carney has been talking and acting like he has a majority, believing that everyone, including the Conservatives, will bend to his will and blindly go along with everything that he does. Well, on Monday, he received a massive wake-up call as all of the opposition parties, including Elizabeth May of the Greens, lined up against him and defeated the Liberals on a vote which demands that he present a budget prior to the summer break. Let's take a look.
Orders of the day, resuming the adjourned debate on address and reply to the speech of the throne.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And now that their majesties have left the National Capital Region, we can really pick apart the throne speech that the government wrote yesterday. Yesterday, Canadians heard a throne speech that was not bad on slogans and rhetoric, but terrible on any kind of detail and a plan. And a lot of times, government members will defend that by saying, well, you know, the details come out in the legislation. And while there may be some truth to that, usually in a throne speech, you at least get a clear indication of what that legislation will do. In other words, the way that the government is going to accomplish the goals that they have set out for themselves. But we got precisely none of that yesterday. We were told the government wants to build more homes, and yet all they did was talk about increasing the number of bureaucrats that run programs in Ottawa, and nothing to incentivize municipalities to speed up development processes and lower development charges. They copied and pasted, some might call it plagiarism, which is something that the Prime Minister has some familiarity with, many aspects of the Conservative platform, one of which specifically was eliminating the GST on new home construction.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is on May 28th, Wednesday, May 28th, right after the throne speech was delivered the day before. And this is Andrew Scheer essentially kicking off this whole debate on the throne speech. And what they're doing here is they're debating kind of what's going to go into the reply to His Majesty the King on this throne speech. Now, a lot is talked about. You can add amendments, you can add sub-amendments, you can do a lot of things. And it's a bit confusing because although you can add amendments and sub-amendments in this reply, those are not necessarily legally binding unless they are made legally binding and decided beforehand. But the actual vote on whether or not to accept the throne speech and whether to accept the government's plan, that is legally binding. That is a confidence vote. So Andrew Scheer is kicking things off here and already twisting the knife on Mark Carney by saying, well, there were some things plagiarized from the Conservative platform. Oh, but, Mark Carney, he'd know a little bit about plagiarism, wouldn't he? Since, it's been proven that his thesis was plagiarized from multiple sources almost verbatim, which we covered during the elections. So very, very interesting twisting of that knife into Mark Carney almost immediately after forming government. Anyhow, let's move along to the amendment itself.
But Mr. Speaker, the best thing you can do with tough medicine is take it early, and then all of us can get together with trying to fix the problem. So we urge the government to table that budget, and it's in that light that I move the following: that the motion I move, seconded by l'honorable député de Bégantic-Lac-d'Érable, Lobinière, that the motion be amended by adding the following: and we urge Your Majesty's advisors to include a firm commitment to present to Parliament an economic update or budget this spring before the House adjourns for the summer that incorporates measures aimed at unleashing Canada's economic potential, including full accountability of Canada's finances.
Okay, that's the original amendment, and Andrew Scheer talked for almost 20 minutes on justifying this amendment. So if you're interested in that, you can take a look at the beginning of Parliament in the first link in our sources that is always there in our description, and you can watch the full speech there. So this was the first. I'm not even going to say first, but one of the first political plays by the Conservatives and the opposition parties against the Carney government. Now, they've debated that on all day Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday. And there was a sub-amendment that just added some wording in there that the NDP proposed, which everybody agreed to. And then it came to the actual vote itself. How did that go? Let's take a look.
Mr. Scheer, seconded by Mr. Berthold, moved the following amendment, that the motion be amended by adding the following. Shall I dispense? Yes. If a member participating in person wishes that the amendment as amended be carried or carried on division, or if a member of a recognized party participating in person wishes to request a recorded division, I would invite them to rise and indicate it to the chair.
Okay, so we're about to get to the vote. Now, what the speaker did is he essentially laid out that there is an amendment on the reply to the throne speech. He laid out who actually proposed it, who seconded it, because you have to have somebody who proposes it and you have to have it second for it to actually be valid. And then he says, shall I dispense? So what he means by that is, does he need, can he just move on without reading the entire text of the motion, because everybody in the House already knows what it is. So when he says, shall I dispense, and if nobody says nay or no, then he can just move on and continue the process. If they say nay, what he would have to do is read out the entirety of the motion itself and the amendment. But since nobody did say nay and everybody said yes, you may dispense, that allows him to just move on. And then he says, if anyone by recognized party, so NDP isn't recognized, if anyone by a recognized party would like a recorded division, essentially meaning, do you want a fully recorded vote, then they just have to say yes, and it only needs to be one person. One person can say yes, and then they have to do a full recorded vote. And on this, you better believe that they want a recorded vote.
Recorded vote, okay. La période de 10 minutes.
The 10-minute period for members voting electronically has started, and the House will now proceed to the vote for members participating in person. All those in favour of the amendment as amended will please rise.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Schmale.
Mr. Schmale.
Mr. Deltel.
Mr. Deltel.
Ms. Dancho.
Ms. Dancho.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Mr. Barlow.
Mr. Barlow.
Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Small.
Mr. Small.
Mr. Brassard.
Mr. Brassard.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Berthold.
Mr. Berthold.
Mr. Duncan.
Mr. Duncan.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Morin.
Mr. Morin.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Aitchison.
Mr. Aitchison.
Now, for those that are new to votes, so when you actually vote, you don't press anything, you don't sign anything, you don't drop a ballot into anything in the House of Commons. What you do is you stand in place and wait for your name to be called and yourself to be counted. In some other democracies, it's actually a button vote, and what that actually allows people to do, and you've seen this on camera, is when the vote is called, you have one person sometimes that is sitting in the legislature or in the House, and they tap their button to vote, but then they'll reach around and tap all their colleagues' buttons as well. So it's actually not the colleagues themselves that are voting. So this is a method to ensure that can't happen. If you want to have your vote counted, you have to stand in place or indicate so on the parliamentary voting app, or be present online to actually verbally cast your vote to the speaker. So you see here that naturally all of the Conservatives are standing in order to vote, and all of them are counted. And it's just amazing how many of them there are at this point. They go all along the end of the House and surround the other parties. It's something else. It's really something else. 143 now, since Ned Couric just issued his resignation the other day. Now, all the parties vote one by one, so you don't have all the parties standing at once. So after the Conservatives have all been counted, now it's the Bloc's turn, and you can see that they are also all standing, so they are in favor of this amendment as well. And what you see over there is Jenny Kwan. she was the only one present to be counted for the vote in the House of Commons for the NDP, but she did stand. So that indicates that all of the NDP are behind this as well. And the nays, naturally, the Liberals are against. They are literally standing against an amendment that says that the government should produce an economic statement or a budget prior to the end of the spring session. So this is crazy, folks. This is crazy. Well, maybe it's not so crazy. It's not surprising, but it's something else just to see this, that a government that wants to be taken seriously, or you think they want to be taken seriously, they want to spend $500 billion of Canadians' money, and they don't even want to present a budget. And they are voting against an amendment on the address and the reply to speech from the throne that actually calls for them to produce a budget. First time in almost 60 years that a government wouldn't present a budget at the outset of governing. It's insane.
The table will now compile the results of the vote.
Yeas pour 166, 166. Nays contre 164, 164.
So carried. I declare the amendment as amended carried.
So, Mr. Carney, welcome to a minority government. Welcome to a government that is going to be held to account, amazingly, by the opposition parties. Razor thin margin, 166 to 164. So that means four people in the Liberal Party didn't vote. So remember what we were talking about, even if they did have a majority, it would be an unstable majority. This is actually the reason, and we talked about this, where in a lot of cases, people actually aren't present to vote or aren't available to vote. So this is interesting, because if every one of the Liberals had actually voted, this motion or this amendment would have failed. Now, if every member of the opposition had voted, this would have also won in any circumstance. But you see my point. Only 166 members of the opposition voted. Only 164 of the Liberals voted. So there's many cases where not everybody is available to vote. So even if the Liberals had a 172 seat razor thin majority, it's a very shaky majority. Now they don't. They don't. So it makes it even harder. But so what's the point of this? Is this going to force Carney to put forth a budget? Well, not legally, because it's not legally binding. But this is a shot at this government and Mark Carney that the will of Parliament, okay, the will of Parliament is that Canadians deserve a budget. And we saw that sometimes the will of Parliament, despite not legally binding, can actually have a significant effect and force the government to do something. As we saw with David Johnston. He ended up resigning after immense pressure from Parliament, despite the fact that there was no requirement for him to legally resign during Justin Trudeau's initial fake public inquiry. Now, this shows Mark Carney also that you're not going to get any free votes in the House of Commons. The Greens, NDP, Bloc, there's no free votes here. So, and all of them teamed up against you. So when the Conservatives, the Bloc, and the NDP team up and say, Carney, we want a budget and we want it now. Now it's going to be political pressure on Carney if he continues not to have that budget, because what all the opposition parties will then throw in his face, and we're going to expect that starting today in question period, is will you defy the will of the people? Because that's all the Liberals have been saying. Well, you know, the Canadian people have elected us and they've given us a mandate. Well, the Canadian people elected all the opposition parties as well and given them a mandate to hold your government to account. So are you going to respect the will of the people and the will of Parliament and put forward that budget? Or are you not? And if you don't, you're going to hear about it every single day.